Welcome to the August the 8th, 1989 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you back memories of Grand Prairie of the past and bring those people to you that may still be living in Grand Prairie or nearby that can relate to a wonderful history show. This is our history tape number 100, and on a 100 you must have a very special person, and today we do. Catherine Allen, we're delighted to welcome you to It Happened in Grand Prairie.
Thank you, Ruthie. It's so lovely to be here.
Wonderful. Catherine Allen, a long-time Grand Prairian up until about 15 or 16 years ago, very important mover and shaker in our community. We'd like, first of all, to set the stage for this interview by your looking into your camera and giving us something that you dearly love to research, and that is your genealogy. Tell us about your parents. Give us all of their names in full and tell us anything you would like to about the history of the two families that are melded together to make Catherine Allen.
Thank you, Ruthie. My family came to Grand Prairie in 1942 as a result of my father getting a job at North American Aircraft Factory, which you know now as LTV. It was a small town then. It was not really prepared for the influx of people who came in here, but eventually they did expand enough that to allow all the people to live here. My father was Doyle B. Underhill. He died in 1974. And my mother is Billy Underhill, Eastwood Underhill. That's her maiden name. She still lives and is in Denison, where I live. We lived here for several years. In fact, I went through the 8th grade high school, and then I went away to college while we were here. And the year I graduated from college in 1951, my parents moved to Greenville. My father was transferred there with the aircraft factory. I went there shortly, but came back here to Grand Prairie when I got a job in Dallas. And then I lived here until 1975. And when I went away to college to get a master's degree in order to teach in college, which was my biggest goal in life, I guess, was to get to teach in college.
Catherine, where were you born? And if you want to give us the date, but we'd like to know especially the county, and tell us about Catherine Allen as she was growing up. If you came here in the 8th grade, tell us about the first 7 years of Catherine Allen's life.
Well, I was actually born in Texas and lived here for 10 months. And then my family...
Where?
At Louisville,
Good.
Denton County.
All right.
Then we moved back to Oklahoma, where my parents had came from, to Texas. Lived there until I came here in 42.
In 1942. And you came because of your dad's job.
Yes.
Now that your dad was with North American Aviation, do you have in your memory bank what he did for North American Aviation? What did he do out there? Or you're not sure?
I'm not sure. I know when he retired, he was in charge of the upholstery shop and knew how to do the blueprints for reupholstering the planes. They would bring in these great big planes that would have to be completely refurbished inside. He would do the blueprints for all the materials and for all the seats and everything like that. That's about all I know.
All right. Now, while he was at North American Aviation, did your mother work out of the home?
Yes, my mother worked at the A&P grocery store as a checker.
All right. Was that here in Grand Prairie, Texas?
Yes.
And if so, do you remember where it was located at that time?
Yes. It was located at the corner of Carrier Parkway and Jefferson. There was a little shopping center there.
Little shopping center there. Okay, that is wonderful. And she worked there until you all moved to Greenville then?
She just worked until I got out of college, and then she quit work.
All right. Now, when you left high school at Grand Prairie High School, we know that you have some very important memories of your class. Tell us the illustrious graduating class that you were in from Grand Prairie High School. We also have before us a wonderful picture that we're going to show at the end of the show showing this very famous class. What year was it?
1947. was my
1947.
graduating year. And one year, several years later, when I was working at the Grand Prairie Daily News, someone called me and said, they're selling the pictures of the graduating classes that always hung in the hall. And they said, if you would like that one picture, that's all there is, you better get down there. Well, I rushed down there, and sure enough, I was the first one there. So I got to buy the only picture of this graduating class from 1947. And I have treasured it through these years. It has so many memories in it.
Moving here in the 8th grade, where did you all live in town?
We lived in the north central part of town.
All right. And of course, you did you walk to Grand Prairie High School?
I was within walking distance.
In walking distance? Would you like to name drop maybe the principal or one or two of your favorite teachers, or maybe someone that inspired you in high school to say, yes, Catherine Allen wants to go on to college and do all of the good things?
Oh, Ruthie, there's a story behind that.
Good.
There was never a time in my life that I knew that you didn't go to college. After high school, there was college, because my father was determined that his daughter was going to high school, was going to college. And so that was just it.
Understood.
It was understood. I never had any other thought but that I would go to college.
All right. Now, can you remember your principal or some of your favorite?
Wood.
Mr. Dale Wood?
Yes. And his wife, Hazel.
Hazelwood, and that was in the old red school?
Yes.
The 11th grade school?
Yes.
Up on College Street?
That's right.
That's great.
Big auditorium by the side of it.
Well, can you name drop any of your classmates that maybe have become famous, or that you remember, or the president of your class? Or
Hobbs, Jasper Hobbs was the president of our class.
All right.
But I'm afraid to mention anymore because I've forgotten so many names.
All right.
Being
When
gone.
you were in school, what was your favorite subject?
Well, I worked on the newspaper one year.
All right, the
and
Prairie Dog.
Yes, really enjoyed that. And I also liked the literature classes because I'm an avid reader. So I enjoyed that very much.
All right, and when you graduated from Grand Prairie High School, you said, I went away to college, but we didn't know where.
University of Mary Hardin Baylor at Belton.
All right.
I went there and graduated in '51.
All right, and when you entered there, did you have your goal set as to what your career would be?
I surely did, and I was one of those people who said, I will not change my major. I went in and I said, that's it, because many people did. I went in as a business major, and in the middle of my junior year, I changed my major to speech and drama.
All right.
And I had to get in all those major subjects in a year and a half. And it was a lot of cramming, but I found my niche. I loved drama, and I loved the speech part of it. And it kind of set me up for the rest of my life, learning how to speak before the public, because I was a little bit shy in those days, believe it or not.
All right.
I grew up a shy person. But that brought me out and gave me a foundation that I could go on into my business world.
All right, and following your college and graduation, what happened to Catherine
Well,
Ann?
I tried to get a job teaching English. I had minored in English, but there were no jobs available. And then, wonder of wonders, the Baptist Standard, the state Baptist publication, called me in for an interview. I have to credit Hazel Rogers Bland for this. She was a good friend and knew that I was looking for a job and told them about me. And they called me in for an interview and hired me as serve on the editorial staff and photographer. And I said, well, I really am only an amateur photographer. And they said, we'll teach you. And they did, Ruthie. They taught me.
And where was this? In
Dallas.
In Dallas.
I worked there 12 and a half years, drove back and forth from Grand Prairie to Dallas every day for 12 and a half years, and loved every minute of it. They taught me photography, and it was the hard way to learn, Ruthie, on the job. I remember the first day I went out to take a picture. It was a large 4x5 speed graphic camera. They put the settings on it they thought I would need, and they sent me out. And I tell my students, I was just young enough and foolish enough to go, and I got a picture. And I guess that set me up then right there. I got a picture. But I told my students I made every mistake there was to be made, and sometimes twice, but I learned photography. I got a good basic dose of it. And Ruthie, I thought that I had something extra to give to the students because I had been in the field. I knew. I could tell them the reality out there of what they were going to face when they went into photography. The things that they would need to do that would help them. And it just felt like I had a little edge there for my students.
All right, now you were with the Baptist Standard for 14 years.
12 and a half.
12 and a half. What happened to that relationship?
Well, one day I decided I wanted to retire. Can you believe it? I did. And
had you married by this time?
Oh, yes, I had married.
You had married by this time?
I had a child.
Had you had that wonderful child that we're going to talk about now?
Yes, I had that wonderful child.
Would you name drop him above all?
Timothy is his name.
Timothy Allen.
Yes. So I left the Baptist Standard and retired to my home. I was going to enjoy my home and my child and my husband. And one day, about 3 months after I'd been retired and was really enjoying life, the editor of the Grand Prairie Daily News called me, Tex Adams, wonderful newspaper man. Oh, and he said, we're a little short on help here. Could we just get you to take some pictures for us? We'll just call you and say, we need you to take such and such a picture. And
freelance sort of.
Yeah, yes. I said, well, okay, I can do that.
And still watch after Timothy?
Yes, yes. But more and more, he kept giving me more assignments and more assignments. And I loved it. I loved the people here. These are marvelous people in this town. And I loved working with them. And so finally one day he said, listen, we're paying you too much for part-time work. Come to work for us full-time so we won't go broke paying you for this part-time work. Well, I thought that sounded interesting, so I went to work for the Grand Prairie Daily News as photographer.
All right.
And they booked me sometimes every 15 minutes. I would have time to go to one and from that drive to the other one by the time the next picture was ready to be taken. And I was loving every minute of it. I really enjoyed it. And then I worked up and I became sort of an unofficial assistant editor. And I learned about putting out the paper and, pardon me, things like that. And then the editor left. Well, I was promoted to editor. Ruthie, I was scared to death when it hit me that I was responsible for every page in that newspaper. It had to be filled with stories, not just stories, but interesting stories and timely stories.
Authentic stories.
Oh, yes, definitely. And there were ethics to consider. I'm a strong believer in ethics in the newspaper business. But I had a marvelous staff, and they worked very hard and backed me, and we made it. For 3.5 years, I was editor. And then I made this big decision. I wanted to teach in college. And I went back to college at a late date, and again, scared to death.
And where did you go?
I went to East Texas State University to work on a Master of Journalism with an emphasis in photography. They have the program that's the best photography program in the Southwest. They're quite well known for their photography department. Went there so afraid that I wouldn't fit in with the younger people. They didn't pay any attention to my age. They had just accepted me as if I were one of them, and it just... In a 1.5 years, I was out, Ruthie. And when I went in, I was so afraid I wouldn't finish, that I wouldn't be able to. And I got enmeshed in it, and in a 1.5 years, now that's including writing the master thesis. Incidentally, my master thesis was on Tex Adams.
How wonderful.
Oh, I enjoyed that, Ruthie, learning about his life and being able to write about what a marvelous newspaper man he was. And it wasn't long after I finished that thesis that he died. And I was grateful that I was able to finish that, and he got to read it before he died.
Oh, that was wonderful.
It was.
Following all of this great surge of education again.
Yes.
Then what did Catherine do?
Again, I was afraid, Ruthie. I was afraid nobody would want me. At my age, I was afraid, but you know, somebody did. Odessa Junior College wanted me. I went
out in
West Texas, and let me tell you, I fell in love with West Texas. What I fell in love with, Ruthie, were the people. Marvelous people out there, good people. And they welcomed me and made me a part of their community. And it was wonderful. Ruthie, I had been happy in all my jobs. I had enjoyed them. But Ruthie, I found something above happiness, and it's called joy. And I didn't know there was such a thing before. But when I walked across that campus and realized where I was and what I was doing, it welled up inside of me, and I just laughed as I walked across that campus. I was real careful not to let anybody see me laughing out there by myself. But Ruthie, that was special. It's the joy that came to me, being where I ought to be, doing what I ought to be doing. It was marvelous. And Ruthie, I never lost that joy. I carried it up to the day that I retired. And I'm so grateful that I was able to carry that joy all the way through my teaching.
You didn't retire from Odessa, though. What happened after Odessa?
Well, out there I was the journalism teacher, and I taught a couple of photography classes, but I was in charge of journalism, and I wanted photography. That's my first love. Grayson County College had an opening. They called me. Come and be interviewed. I did, and they hired me on the spot. And I came up here. I just was at Odessa a year, and I regretted leaving, kind of, because I liked it. But I wanted to teach that photography, and I had charge of the photography department here, so I came. And they were marvelous years.
And that's in Denison, Texas?
Denison, Texas, yes.
All right.
Good college, open door college. We just take students. You want to go to college, come. The administration backed me in my department. It was a little rundown. Whatever I wanted, within reason, they said, we'll get it for you. And we built that department up until its reputation is very good these days. It's well equipped for the students. It's pleasant, and they can learn a lot there in that department. And I've been so glad to be a part of that, Ruthie.
And how long were you at Grayson County
11
College?
years.
11 years, teaching your first love, photography.
Yes, yes.
And how could you leave your first love again?
Ruthie, there's some things I want to do, and I want to get to them before I'm too old to do them.
All right, well, before we get into that, let's show and tell a little bit.
All
Before
right.
we get into, we're going to save this award until the last. You have mentioned your dad.
Yes.
I'd like for you to
He was a
hold
marvelous man.
this photo up right where we have decided we needed to hold that. And that is a wonderful likeness of that young man.
Yes, it is.
And this,
This is my mother.
I want you to hold up your sweet mom. Isn't that wonderful? And let's get her on our historical record. And now that we have done that, tell us what you're into now.
I'm into genealogy, Ruthie.
Oh, I just knew you were going to mention that. And if while you're talking about genealogy, would you hold this up and explain what on earth you have done with something very special here and how you came about it?
I'm doing my genealogy in pictures. In addition to the information about my people, I am copying all the old pictures that I can find. I've gone back to my great-great-great-grandmother, and I have pictures from her all the way down, all brothers and sisters, children, uncles and aunts, all the way down. I have a huge album of pictures, and this is a plus for me. This is a picture of my father's school.
The lower picture
Yes.
is all of the school. All right.
About 1913, 14.
All right.
In this picture are all my uncles and aunts, including my father. And I was able to go in with a close-up lens and take a picture of each one of those from this school picture. Someone heard that I was doing my family in pictures and said they had this school picture and loaned it to me so that I could copy it, could make a copy of it. And now at a particular time, I have all my uncles and aunts at a certain age with my father.
And your love of photography has blossomed into a brand new hat that you're wearing.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
I've been this summer. I've already been to Oklahoma City. Spent a week in Tennessee at the State Archives, a week in Pennsylvania at the State Archives, and a couple of days in North Carolina, researching my family history. I'm going to put together a story of my family history, and I've just about finished the details so that I can begin it now.
And you're spinning all of this off from your central location in Denison, Texas, where
Yes.
you live with your mom?
No,
or she lives nearby?
She lives 2 blocks from me.
Wonderful.
A good walking distance. We about walk back and forth between our houses. She's been a great deal of help to me, particularly going back to college. She backed me in doing that and encouraged me. And then 5 years ago, she moved to Denison, and we've just
She
developed...
supervises you now?
Yes, she does. We've developed a very good relationship, and she travels with me and helps me to do research. She'll search the indexes for the names I need and will tell me, here's a book you need to look at.
Oh, wonderful. Now, there are 2 other things we want to talk about. We want to talk about where is Timothy, and tell us about Sweet Timothy and a little bit about him. And then we want you to show and tell this Teaching Award of Excellence.
Well,
Oh,
this is the top. When I received this, I just thought, you know, nothing can be greater or better than this, because this is a Teaching Excellence Award that was given to me by my college for excellence in teaching and for service to the students and to the college.
And that says April 1988.
Yes.
That was last year.
Yes, that's right. They sent me to Austin to a 3-day conference on teaching excellence, where I was able to hear from national educators about the future of education and where it's going, and it was just a marvelous experience to get to do this. And this hangs in my house as a reminder to me of what I have had, what I've done for the lives of some of my students. This is tangible proof to me that I have made some contribution to my world, and I treasure this above all else.
All right, now tell us about your treasure in Timothy.
Timothy is in Florida.
All right.
He is a diver, loves the ocean, moved down there and said, this is it, I love the ocean. And as I love photography, he loves diving in the ocean, so he is having a wonderful time there.
That is great. And tell him one day you hope he'll make you a grandmother so
Yes.
that you'll share
Yes.
all of these other good things with us. All right, now, Catherine, you also had some real wonderful information here in your research of some of your photography work, and tell us how that happened and show off this full
This
page.
is from one of the local newspapers. Both newspapers were a great deal of help to me in filling my classes and in publicizing the photography department. And in fact, they sent their new staff photographers out there to take the course. They were so behind the work there. And this is an interview from one of the newspapers showing some of my pictures.
Oh, that is wonderful. I'll take the bedroom here on my right.
Everyone likes that.
Yes.
It's such a pretty room. Then the staff writer interviewed me and wrote the interview, and then the pictures of me here being interviewed, I told him it's real hard to be on the other side of the camera.
Yes, it is.
Real hard. But the pictures were taken by their staff photographer, who happened to be my former student.
Oh, you
And
knew they would do a good job.
I was so pleased that they sent him to do that. I just felt kind of like a celebrity that they sent a staff photographer and a staff writer to interview me and take pictures, and I really enjoyed having this.
All right, now let's talk a little bit about the time when Catherine Allen was the editor of the Grand Prairie Daily News and the many outreaches that you had, some of the exciting assignments that you had when you were our editor.
Isn't it, Ruthie, let me tell you about, I guess, the most exciting one that we had, and there was a funny incident that happened in it too. A man took a hostage at one of the businesses on West Jefferson and had a gun and was shooting randomly. You know, those businesses front a street, and across the street there's a double railroad track, and it's kind of built up just a little. Well, the only place to hide was behind those railroad tracks. And here we were, there were a couple of reporters and a photographer, and I went out there too to guard my staff members from the shots, and the police were all hovered in the dirt, in the gravel behind those railroad tracks, watching the business across the street, and they were trying to talk him out of there. He eventually let his hostage go, but he still had his gun and was shooting. the funny incident was that one of the reporters, he was scrambling so to get under cover, and as he knelt down behind the railroad track, the seat of his pants split. Well, he could not leave his assignment. He simply had to stay there and kind of back around places, but he stuck to his assignment and finished it. Eventually, they did talk the person out of the building, put his gun down and took him.
That had a happy ending.
Yes, it had a happy ending.
For you all, but not necessarily for the man with the gun.
We had a real good story for the newspaper, but it was hairy there for a little while.
Catherine, also while you were in Grand Prairie, Texas, and I don't know which era this fit in, you were the president of the Grand Prairie Garden Club, the oldest garden club in our city. Would you tell us about your interest? What sparked your interest in garden clubbing?
Well, I had some friends who were in it, and I've always liked to try to arrange flowers, although I wasn't very accomplished at it. But some friends told me about the garden club and invited me to come, and I went and liked it. And so I decided, well, I better learn how to arrange flowers properly. So I started attending and learning and just really enjoyed it. I learned so much in that club, and they had so many good members, and we had a flower show every spring, and I was able to win several of the top ribbons in that flower show, which made me very proud. Of course, I had a lot of help.
Sat up all night soaking your irises in the bathtub with ice water and all of the good things?
And all the little tricky things that you have to do to keep them alive, like you put egg whites in the tulips to keep the petals from falling too far apart. And then you wrap tape around some flowers, roses, and the next morning, just before the judges come, you run and take that tape off, and then there your flowers just perfectly formed.
Other than the Grand Prairie Garden Club, were there other clubs or organizations that you were involved with when you lived here in Grand Prairie, Texas?
Well, the Women's Chamber of Commerce.
Women's Division?
Yes, Women's Division. Oh my, I'll forget some that I was in, Ruthie.
All right. Well, how about church? Did you attend a church?
First Baptist Church.
First Baptist Church. Did you ever teach classes? Or
I think I did a little bit of everything in the church, Ruthie. I taught a class and served on the building committee when we put up a new building. Oh, sponsored this and that. So I was quite active in the church.
All right. We have about a minute and a half left on our tape, and hasn't it just gone?
It has flown by.
It has gone.
I've just enjoyed it so much.
I want you to look out and maybe speak to some of the young folks that may be watching our show. Tell them how important it is to start out setting a goal, even if you have to change. Give them your philosophy of a good and successful life that you have had up until this time. Catherine Allen, would you do that for us?
As I have told my students many times, you have to have standards. You have to adhere to those standards. Now, when the students were in my class, we had standards and they knew it, and I made them adhere to those standards. And most of the time they would anyway. I told them, now when you leave me, you're going to fall away from these things, because I have been very strict with you in keeping you to those standards. But now I want you to remember, these now must become your standards, not just mine, not just because I taught them to you, because they're good standards. And you've got a good basic knowledge of photography, now you need to adhere to it. Education is most important, not just so that you can become something better yourself, but because you can offer the world something. You can develop your mind and you can give back to the world some of the things that it has given to you. And I would encourage you, get an education if at all possible. If you can't, then study on your own. Improve your mind yourself. You can do that. Books are just books, but a mind can drink in all the knowledge from anywhere that you find it. Drink it in.
Catherine Allen, you have been one of the most refreshing interviews we've ever done. We want to thank you for coming all the way from Gainesville and sharing the past. Denison. I still want to promote you close together. And thank you. And give our regards to your mother and to Timothy. And thank you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.
Thank you, Ruthie.
You sit just a minute. Is that your picture? Oh, yeah.
Good, good.
And you can see that one of the credits there with it.
Yeah. Ruth, you're so smooth. Well, you ought to be. You've been at it 10 years. It was so easy.